I'm sure a big part of that, I think, is crucial to your efforts in communicating. But I think your parents are wonderful in the sense that they're open to changing and hearing you. I can imagine that not all parents are like that, and many clients probably have parents who are not open to having a conversation at all, or it would just make it worse if they try to be authentic with them. In these
Mhm.
instances, what you suggest them do to deal with the unfinished business?
So I tell people, if your parents are open to having the conversation, great. Then just ask them, would you be willing to have the conversation? If your parents are not going to be open to it, you don't have to ask them permission. You could still ask them questions. So, for example, my mom would always call and ask, have you eaten? What did you eat? Right. And so you could throw in when the parent calls, you could say, oh yeah, I had this and this and this for dinner. Oh, I remember when I was a kid, I would eat that same thing that you would make. What did you like to eat when you were a kid? Right.
Mm.
And I always say, start with easy questions like, what did you like to eat as a kid? What was your favorite thing that your parents made for you? How did you like to play? What were your favorite subjects? What were your favorite activities? Do you remember a friend of yours? Like, ask easy questions. Don't jump in and say, what was your biggest
Sorry,
regret?
ask them about their lives, you mean?
Yeah, ask them because the whole point is to get to know them. And I always tell everyone, your goal is to get to know your parents. It is not to change them. It is not to have them understand you.
Yeah.
We always want other people to understand us. We have to
Exactly. Because I
understand them
was
first.
thinking already of clients who actually are feeling hurt and are at the point where they're dying for their parents to understand them and they feel very angry towards them and want their own truths to be heard and acknowledged. But then if they tell their parents that, they probably get a lot of defensive responses. So they're feeling quite stuck. There's like this huge sense of injustice. And
Yeah.
that's what they call unfinished business, like this ball of anger and injustice doesn't go anywhere because their parents refuse to acknowledge what they have been through, or even situations where they feel like they had a traumatic parentified childhood, whereas the parents go, well, we tried really hard to put food on the table. You had it much better than us. What else do you
Hmm.
want? You call that abuse? Try what we had.
Hmm.
And so, their anger are left stuck.
Yeah. And that's, and this is the truth with any relationship. Doesn't matter if it's a friend, a coworker, a parent, a colleague, a child.
Mhm.
One person has to be willing to put aside their egos, all their stories and narratives, and actually be the one to say, I want to understand you first. I want to understand why you're feeling the way you're feeling. What is your story? What are your beliefs? Like, what's happening with you? Because if you're attacking them, they're attacking you. No, it's not going to get anywhere. Someone has to be willing to be the one to go first and say, I just want to understand you. And it's not until one person feels understood that
Mm.
they would be willing to try to be open to understanding you.
Yep. It's so hard to be the bigger person though when you feel like you're the victim
Yeah.
or
And that's
coming to
part of
wake
it.
up to that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I tell people you need to know why. Why do you want this? And your why should not be, I want to change my parents and I want them to understand me. But why do you want your relationship with your parents to change? What do you want to be different? And I honestly believe that no matter what we say, no matter how far away we try to run from our parents, deep down, all of us still want them to love us and to accept us.
Yeah, of
That
course.
that's core for so many of us. And so if that's your why, like I want this loving, accepting relationship. I want to be close to my parents. That should be your why going into the relationship, into these conversations. And it's just getting to know your parents. And you start with those easy questions of what was your childhood like? Not that's not specific enough. Be very specific in your questions. What did you like to eat? What was your favorite subject? How did you like to play? What was your fondest memory? And so start getting to know your parents. And
Mm.
remember, like it took me 3 years to get to where I'm at, and there were hard moments and know that it's not going to be easy. That's why having that why is so important.
Mm.
Can you repeat that?
Do you ever suggest people to cut off and give up?
it depends on what they're hoping for.
Mm.
Um, there are, so in my perspective, there's so much of this toxic, narcissistic parents, cut off people, set boundaries thing going on. And while I think that the intention is good, it helps people, set these boundaries. And there are true narcissists and toxic people out there. But I think these words are becoming overused, and we're starting to
Mm.
cut off and set boundaries with people that are cutting off important connective ties. And there's actually a research from NIH, and it shows that one of the top risks for estrangement between a mother and her adult child, it's not because of toxicity or narcissism. It is because of a difference in values. So they have different belief systems, and that's why they're cutting each other off,
Yeah.
right? And so it's, can you have the courage to actually move through and move past the differences in your beliefs and just get to know each other as human beings? You don't have to agree, but there's a difference between, agreeing and getting to know each other as human beings.
Mm. That's beautiful.
Thank
I
you.
want to, I want people to know forgiveness is not a requirement. But at the same time, I also think ultimately, if you can come to an understanding and agreement from a loving place, it's much better than holding the resentment and cuts off and then feel like, there's always going to be this big hole. Because with that, it's possible, but it always comes with really a complex mixed bag of feelings that could take years to heal
Yeah.
from.
And 100%. And on top of that, it's recognizing that no parent sets the intention of, I want to screw up as a parent.
And yeah, I
Right.
completely
We all
agree.
go in, we all go in trying to be the best we can, and we're all going to mess up. I look at my 2-year-old every day and I say to him, I'm going to do something that's going to mess up. And I hope that you still know I love you and forgive me for it. Because I know I'm going to mess up. None of us are perfect. Even with my husband, his mom, he's white American, grew up in a household where his parents were like his perennial cheerleaders. They were always supportive. And his mom always said, "You are perfect."
Mm.
That screwed him up. And you would think, how does that screw him up? And it's because he received it as a child as, I love you if you're perfect.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he would be
Or there
afraid to
could
not,
be a lot of coddling with, out of love and kindness.
yeah. And so that's why, like, we're all going to mess up. And so it's, can we recognize that our parents did the best they could? They're perfectly imperfect human beings, and they messed up.
Yeah.
And it's hard for anyone to admit that they messed up, to apologize. I mean,
Mm.
for anybody who's listening, how hard is it for you to admit when you messed up and
Mm.
to apologize?
It is a complex issue. Yeah. Well, thank you for shedding light on that and sharing your perspective. I think that's something that I want to tread very carefully on because I don't want people to feel that they're obliged to have to do the forgiveness route. At the same time, it could be more liberating if you can reach that because sometimes holding on to anger, releasing anger and processing anger is great, but holding on to anger for the rest of your life and letting it seep, it is like drinking poison and hoping the other person to die.
Yeah,
Mm.
it is. And you have to think about forgiveness as, you're not doing it for the other person, you're doing it for yourself. And you're not necessarily, it's almost as like you're forgiving, you're letting go. That's what I like to see it as. Like, let me truly let go of this. I understand and I can let go.
Yeah. Go on,
One
you go.
thing, one thing that a lot of people ask me is, what if I've already lost my chance? It goes back to that unfinished business. What if my parents are gone? And the thing that I tell them is, are there ways for you to learn about your parents' story? Whether it's digging through some of their old things, talking to their, people who might have known them, aunts, uncles, their friends, but really trying to piece together their story so that you have an understanding. The goal of this is really so that you understand their life, their story, and see them as a human being that had these experiences, and have an appreciation for who they are.
Thank you. Have you
Mhm.
ever worked with people with unresolved stuck grief where the parents were gone and they couldn't let go? Or is that
I, yeah, I have. And it's a long process and it's around allowing yourself to grieve. So all emotions are sensations, it's energy in the body. Emotions need to come in, they come into your body and they need to exit. If we don't let them exit, what so many of us do is we numb the emotions, we suppress them, but they're still sitting in our bodies as energy, which then results in um, inflammation and pains and all these other things. And in moments when we least expect it, those emotions burst out of us. So it really is around giving yourself the time to
mm,
feel the emotions. And when I say feel it, it means not spinning in your head in the stories, but really feel the sensations. Like grieve is painful, it doesn't feel good in the body. So it's just sitting with those sensations, letting yourself to fully process it, and giving yourself the time and space to do it.
I
And
think
then it becomes celebrating the person's life.
mm, I think a lot of people have the fear that once they open the floodgate, it will never get closed.
Yes, and if you suppress it, it's still there
Yeah.
and it comes out when you least expect it. I had a client who her father passed away 2 years ago and she's never fully allowed herself to grieve. And there was a moment when her uncle came to visit her and he said something. It was like her dad's brother, and her
Mm,
uncle said something that all of a sudden just like released all this pain that was in her that she hadn't felt in a long time. And it still sits there, and that's part of the thing is you can be intentional and let yourself release it, or it just pops up when you least expect it. So she ended up bawling in front of her uncle, um, and she didn't know what to do with that. So
Thank you for sharing all that you've shared today.
yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Is there anything you would like to add to our conversation?
I think that's a lot of stuff. I would say, just it's challenging. Humans are challenging and complex. And if we were just to have that empathy and compassion and realize that all of us are going through something and have gone through things and will continue to go through things, then it could shift so much of how we interact and engage with each other.
Mm, thank you